Good morning. Welcome to Baltimore Center for Love. I am Reverend Jamel Gilliam. This is a pre recorded message. Today is January 26, 2025. Uh, First, I'd like to say happy birthday to my beloved wife, Krista. She is 25 years old today. I'll let her tell you exactly how old she is if you ask. She may not tell you. This monthly theme is stretching into possibility, and our weekly theme is choosing possibility. First, I'd like to have a reading. Contemplating, reading, and writing about the law of valuable practices. But the most powerful action comes through consistent, repeated practice. To truly engage with the law of life, we must go beyond theory and actively apply our understanding. Fill your mind with love, possibility, trust, and joy, and observe how the law responds by manifesting these qualities in your experience. As Ernest Holmes noted, we often indulge too much into theory and too little practice. This week, let's shift our focus to practical application. By consistently applying the principles of the law, we open ourselves to limitless possibilities. Remember, the law is always available to us and ready to express itself with whatever we choose to focus on. So let me just say this. We know that Jesus had a true understanding of the law. He was able to tap in to what the Father had already set in motion. Remember that, and I like to say this: God isn't sitting by a computer or by the mailbox waiting for us to mail in and send in our prayers. It's already set in motion. So we have to understand that as this is happening, as these things are happening, we just have to have the faith, we have to have the belief. We have to understand in our passion that God is available to us. And so let to start with the definition. Oh, I'm sorry, an affirmation. It says, "I stretch beyond limits and embrace expansive potential." Again, I'm sorry that I am congested. I stretch beyond limits and embrace expansive potential. And so the scripture that I use to support this is Matthew 19:26. It says, Jesus looked at them and said, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. And it really just talks about, again, like I just said, with our faith, with our belief that all things are possible and that there are no limitations. Again, Mark 9:23, it says, if you can, said Jesus, everything is possible for the one who believes. So again, it talks again about the strength of our belief and of our faith that really takes us to a place where we can achieve our goals. So points of view. So Neville Goddard, a metaphysician, said, "Assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, and continue in that assumption until it is externalized in your world." Let's say that again. Assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, and continue in that assumption until it is externalized in your world. So that, to me, that spoke to how sometimes we pray for something and we ask for something, but we, in our back of our mind, we really don't believe it. And you really have to truly believe what it is that you want to achieve, whether you're praying for change in your life, change in your loved ones' lives, whether it's about just changing situations in the world. We have to believe it. And when we're talking about worldly prayers, I mean, we have to have a community consensus as it relates to that. I think, we know now if we look at world events, there are people praying to have their needs met. And so we see those things unfolding before our eyes, uh, their needs and their interests. I would say folks who want to counter that to pray as well. We have to pray, right? Marianne Williamson, she says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And this is her inspiration that people are to step into the full spectrum of possibility and choosing to embrace their power and their light rather than shrinking back into fear or doubt. Deepak Chopra, I love his quotes and his readings. He wrote so many books. He said, in the midst of movement and chaos, keep stillness inside of you. And so he also is again talking about aligning with the field of infinite and potential uh, growth through mindfulness and stillness. Choosing possibility for him is about aligning your choices with your inner awareness and higher consciousness. So I like to talk about, we the well, religious science, the Church of Religious Science turned into the Centers for Spiritual Living, and they did that because they did not want to be confused with uh, Scientology, because they are not. Centers for Spiritual Living is actually a global movement. And so the founder of that is Ernest Holmes. And so he talks about the law of mind, and he says, there is a power for good in the universe and you can use it. Kind of what I talked about earlier when I started this talk, that there is something happening. The problem is we have to choose what stance we want to take. Are we victims? Are we victors? Are we victims? Are we victors? We have to be honest about our intention and really step into that. When we are praying, when we are believing, when we're having our faith, what part of that do we want to activate our communion with God, with the law, with these things that are really intent for us to have what we need and what we are supposed to have, our purpose. It says Holmes taught that we are all co-creators of our reality by aligning our thoughts with the infinite possibilities of the universe. Choosing possibility means recognizing that the divine power works through us. I want to say a little bit about that. I think that oftentimes folks are like, oh, well, because things are the way they are, we're not supposed to have. And I don't believe that's true. I think we have to be honest about what we want and if we want it, if we truly want it, if we can handle it when we get it. There's a level of stewardship that is needed if you can actually handle it when it comes to you. And I'm not being specific because this, people pray for so many different things. I'm really speaking about the thing that we're praying for. If we go deeper and understand that these things are really for us and not against us. If we want it, we can truly have it. The power of thought. Change your thinking, change your life. And that's been something that folks have said quite often. You've heard that. Different people have been giving credit for saying it. But it's talking about the limits that we perceive in life are often the result of limited thinking. And if we consciously choose expansion and have powerful thoughts, positive thoughts, we can align ourselves with the limitless nature of God, of spirit, and the possibility that it holds. And then lastly, faith and belief. We must train ourselves to think in terms of the allness of God and the unity with all life. That's a tough one right now. We're living in a time where folks have decided that because I'm this, this is that, and because you're this is that, and so we have to understand that we really are connected. We really are one. I think folks, for their own personal intentions, have chosen to be separate so they could attain. Maybe there was already a consciousness of fear, a global or even a community specific thought of fear. And so in their minds, they've chosen one particular way of thinking because they feel that that is the only way to get their needs met, or they felt like they were losing something. I'm not at this point making any appeals to for anyone, because I too do not like the current administration that are in power, and I think that they should be removed. But however, the popular vote decided that they are to be in, and that's what it is at this point. So we just have to be mindful of how people have gone astray in their faith and their belief that we are all connected. So here are the applications for today, and like I said, this is choosing possibility. Uh, I'm going to talk about these. Choosing possibility is not always a default mindset. The second one is much of our thinking and believing operates on autopilot. And lastly, let's embrace our spiritual lives with a sense of playfulness. So first, it says choosing possibility is not always our default mindset. It often requires conscious effort. To shift our thinking, we need to use affirmations such as there is a possibility here, or I am possibility. The power of repetition in this process cannot be overstated. If you really think about the things that have happened to you in your life and for you, negative or positive, and I don't mean to give it a label, but if you really think hardly, and being honest with yourself, those things are things that really showed themselves. If you were like, oh my God, I hope that this don't happen, guess what happens? Those things that you really thought about the most that you didn't want happening because you activated something, right? You created something. If you wanted something, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a thing, an actual object, money, circumstances, those things may have happened for you. And through the power of prayer, you made them occur for you, right? So the power of repetition can, in this process, cannot be overstated. By consistently repeating these affirmations, we reinforce new neural pathways in our mind and align our expectations with the creative law of life. This repetition impresses our consciousness and helps us embody the potential we wish to see. Embracing and practicing affirmation regularly allows us to make possibility a more natural part of our thought process and experience. That's a tough one. Remember, I started by saying choosing possibility is not always a default mindset. And what that means is that some folks go to the negative first, right? They don't think about, hey, I could make this thing happen for you. And I know that it's hard. Many of us have been traumatized, mistreated, abused. Let's talk about how we can change our circumstances and make things happen so that our purpose can unfold, so the possibilities can make themselves a reality in our lives. Secondly, it says, remember, much of our thinking and believing operates on autopilot. It's a natural part of our humanity. To create meaningful change, we must take responsibility for moving beyond these default thoughts that I'm sorry, perpetuate, I always mess that word up, that perpetuate our current reality. Instead, we need to impress ourselves in the creative law of life with the truth of what is possible. Affirmations are powerful, but so too are is the practice of denial when necessary. I recently was teaching a science of mind, spiritual mind treatment class. And really, spiritual mind treatment is prayer, it's scientific and affirmative prayer. And we talked a little bit about denials, and I think sometimes when you find yourself constantly going to the negative, just deny it. I know my wife, she's Baptist, and you've heard traditional folks say, I rebuke, I rebuke." That's a denial, right? That's sometimes your mind goes to that out of fear, out of worry, out of just distrust, and so what you are doing, you are denying that thing. So rebuking is denying, right? And you can say rebuke. You can say that. I'm just using the term denying as a concept that we need to understand. We can deny. So it says, for instance, one might affirm, I deny the power of self doubt and affirm that the self trust is expanding in my life. I'll say that again. I deny the power of self doubt and affirm that self trust is expanding in my life. This process involves acknowledging our past without being bound to it, allowing us to embrace the power of our present understanding. Choosing possibility is not a one time effort, but a daily practice. By consistently applying this approach, we can free ourselves to live more freely and fully. And lastly, it says, let's embrace our lives with a sense of playfulness. What might we co create with the spirit of love and law of life? There's no fixed answer. Instead, we are invited to play and see what unfolds. Stretch beyond the familiar and venture into the unknown. Often, we set our sights on goals we believe are achievable, but what if we dare to ask, pray, and move towards something entirely beyond our current understanding? Choosing to embrace possibility beyond our existing knowledge is a practice of radical consciousness. It's about opening ourselves to the limitless potential that comes from trusting in the expansive power of the spirit and law. The best example that I could give with this one, it really has a lot to do with children, uh, especially when they love and trust their parents. I remember when my children were younger, and they were great at manifesting things that they wanted. My daughter was more about consistency and repetition. Uh, so she would ask you the same question multiple times until finally, like many parents, and my wife says that my daughter has me wrapped around her finger. Uh, and probably most fathers, their daughters do have them wrapped around their fingers. I would just give in, right? Until I got smart enough to say, you know what? I don't care how many times you ask me. You've asked me 10 times, 20 times. It's not going to happen. But in this case, before I figured it out, I would respond and just give her what she wanted. And most of the time, it wasn't anything. Maybe it was a toy. Maybe it was going somewhere to eat, stuff that was affordable and achievable, but she made these things happen for her. And that's probably the most simple example that I could give you. But I'm sure if you think hard enough, you would see that these things happen to you as well. So children are really great at making things happen for them because their belief that their needs are always being met. If they love and they trust, they just go with that, right? Now I'm not speaking to people who may have been traumatized or abused or maybe neglected. I'm speaking more to those who were able to figure out that, hey, I could get everything I need, right? What if we approach God like that? I could get everything I need. Just say that to yourself right now. I could get everything that I need. God will provide everything that I need, right? And the truth is, God is already providing everything that you need. So just approaching this whole thing with a playfulness. So let me recap on the major points. I talked about choosing possibility is not always our default mindset, and we know that we have to tap into that. Maybe there's an effort in that, like not thinking about the things that are not going to happen, thinking about the things that are going to happen, right? Impossible. I remember an artist, she was singing impossible. The word impossible really spells out I'm possible, right? Number two, much of our thinking and believing operates on autopilot. Many of our thinking styles, our thought styles are about just things that are comfortable to us, what we're used to having, how we grew up. This is asking us to step outside of that comfort zone. Think a little bit different. You'd be surprised. Change your thinking and then change your life. Just do things a little different. Uh, I worked as a therapist in my previous career, and a lot of the times, we would say insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. And the truth is, oftentimes folks keep doing the same thing. But what if you did something different? Will there be something different? Yes, there will be. Right. So this is the same thing. And lastly, let's embrace our spiritual lives with a sense of playfulness, right? Being that child again, and many of us are, and I'm over 50, many of us are elders. Don't give yourself a date, don't give yourself an age, chronologically, but in the sense of spirit, in the sense of your faith, to say, hey, I could receive everything that I need, right? I can be provided for. I'm talking about provisions, but whatever those things that you're asking for, just approach it with a sense of playfulness as a child, right? So I'll end with this. Ernest Holmes once asked, "What are chemists in the laboratory?" I'm sorry. We are the chemists in the laboratory of the infinite. What then shall we create? And this was in 365 Science of Mind, a year of daily wisdom. I'll say it again. We are chemists in the laboratory of the infinite. What then shall we create? And this just speaks to how we can have things, make things, manifest things, pray for things, and how those things can be created in our lives. Uh, so, what will you choose to create? Engage with this principle and experiment with it in your own life. Imagine if the first words you spoke each day were affirmations of possibility. Not getting on Instagram, not getting on Facebook, not checking social media or the news, but just waking up, and saying, "What shall I create today?" Right? For the next week, make it a practice to start each day with an affirmative statement. For example, you may say, and this is just an example, God is, therefore I am. I declare that my life is expanding in health, wealth, trust, and more. I am grateful for this truth now, and so it is. Let's see how this practice brings the law into action and transform in your experience. I want to wish everyone a wonderful week. Stay warm if you're on the East Coast. Stay dry in the West Coast, and wherever you are, walk with the presence of love. Take care.